Hello, welcome to another episode of Daily Wisdom Words. I am your co-host, Renee O'Day.
Hey everyone, I'm your co-host, Neil Trevedi, and we want to give you a very warm welcome to our latest episode.
Join us every Saturday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time, where we talk to guests who have stories, advice, and life hacks, all of which take you one step closer to the feeling of hope.
Today, we have the pleasure of talking to someone who has gone out of her way to give hope and inspiration to survivors of child sexual abuse. Today, we talk to survivor, mental health advocate, and also a fellow podcaster all the way from Australia, Nella. Hello, Nella.
Hi, Nella.
Hi, guys.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, just because we both got on, the audience has to know that I am Australian. I call myself that. I'm American, but my mom was born and raised in Australia, so Nella and I could be related. Nella, honey, can you give us a little background of your story and what was the springboard for what you're doing today with, mental health?
Yeah, sure. So I had a bit of a rough childhood, and I'll dive right into it if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
I have divorced parents. And I'm actually doing a little bit of research on that on my page at the moment, how a broken household can contribute to that. So I've got divorced parents, and my sexual abuse first started when I was 5, and it ended when I was around 13 years old, and it was 3 different people. It kind of just, one finished, another one started, one finished.
Relatives? Relatives?
Yeah, no strangers, no stranger danger there. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Thank
I am
you.
so sorry. I am really sorry.
For anybody.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. And so it ended around 13 years old. By the time I was 15, we actually moved from Germany to Australia, and I took that as an opportunity to, you know what, whatever happened there, we're gonna forget it. Funny, you cannot. Your brain and body will not let you forget. But
your
that was my
subconscious
plan.
now.
No.
Yeah, my plan was we'll forget about it, and we're never going to say anything about it, and move on with life. And in summary, and you're welcome to ask as many questions after. By the time I was 28, there was an opportunity where someone had raised it to me and mentioned it, and from that day on, I was not able to let it go. Like the flashbacks, the triggers, they all became stronger, and they were all in my face, and that's when my healing journey started. And I couldn't.
Good for
deny it
you.
anymore.
Can you talk about often when outsiders are looking in to survivors and they don't know the situation, the most common question is always, oh, well, why didn't somebody speak up, or why didn't you tell someone or take some kind of action? Now, of course, for people on the other end, I mean, that's much, much more easier said than done, I know for sure. So can you talk about that and a little bit about the difficulties of someone, not just yourself, but anybody in your position, and why it's so difficult for them to take the proper action sometimes?
Yeah, of course. Such a good question. Because what a lot of people don't realize is that when you're in that situation, anyone and everyone will behave differently. There isn't one way to behave. You're not going to straight away be like, what are you doing? Go away. You know, a lot of people react in a freeze, or there is just, some people have even asked me and said, what about, I kind of laughed, or I cried, or I froze. Like, it's just, there is no uniform way of reacting to these things. So therefore, it isn't that simple. And when people ask these questions, most of the time what we have to remember is that they come from a point of view of not understanding or knowing anything about it. Hence why their question can come across as very naive, and we can take it to heart quite a bit because it's so hurtful. Like, you have no idea what I've gone through, how dare you, and we would love to just attack them in that way, but they come from one point of view, we come from another point of view, and we just got to try and educate each other if possible. And I want to just, anyone listening in, that you do not have to explain yourself to anyone, but if it's someone that you love and care about, sure, take the time, take a deep breath, and try and explain it to them calmly. if you can. If there's tears, let them out. Don't ever hold that in, ever.
Never.
Yeah.
Ever.
Right.
That's unhealthy
Never.
on so many levels.
It's
So,
really unhealthy.
yeah, on
Yeah.
a personal level, when I've been asked about that, it was someone very close to me that asked, why didn't you tell me anything? Why didn't you say anything? Now, with my, the main abuser that I talk about even on my page, who was a male older cousin, and it lasted the longest, which is why I always gravitate towards those examples. He actually started with grooming, so I really always wanted an older brother, and he came along and I was like, wow, perfect, because I was an only child. And, you know,
Right.
he would play with me, he would have fun with me, play pranks, all of that stuff. It then eventually turned into bullying, and then eventually turned into physical abuse, so he would hit me a lot, and then eventually turned into sexual abuse.
Wow.
So it just developed into that. It was, yeah.
Right.
I've never heard of it going from bullying to sexual abuse, but it makes sense. It makes
It does.
100%
It does.
sense. They scare the bejeebies out of you, and then you have to, you know, do what they. Oh,
Yeah.
wow, what a story.
I know. So when the bullying and the physical abuse started, so when he would hit me or tease me, I would speak up about that a lot. I would, you know, the hitting was really painful. I've always been physically a lot smaller than everyone else, even at my age. So, and he was a lot taller and bigger and stronger than me. So, you know, I had gone up to parents before and said, he hits me, he bullies me, help. And it would just be laughed about it. Oh, you're just kids, you're just playing. He's just being rough, and it hurts you a lot more because you're little, you know, that kind of stuff. So it got shushed away. I've mentioned that to both parents back then. I remember very clearly. And that's how it starts. You set the tone, and not believing about that. Why would they believe me about the sexual abuse? And that's what I say. Why would you believe me?
Yeah.
And it's
Well,
silent.
you know, yeah. Well, like you said, you talked to your parents and they shushed you off, you know. What would you do different if you, I mean, would you stand there and stomp your feet, and, you know, if you could tell them again, you know, that it happened, but this time you had to make them believe it. Do you know what you would do different?
You both have got the best questions, honestly. I would just get straight into it, especially now that I have all the faith and confidence in myself that my story is true and it happened. If I had this knowledge back then and that confidence and power back then, I would just get straight into it, call him out in front of everyone, because he would bully me in front of everyone. So I would just say that in front of everyone. And if no one would believe me back then, I don't know, I'd probably run away and start my own life as an 8-year-old.
You know, well, and, you know, and unfortunately you probably have to be descriptive, because 8-year-olds don't know things.
No.
So I think, you know, you would have to say, well, he did this, and your parents would go, whoa, you know, because 8-year-olds don't know that stuff.
No.
You know, do you think things have gotten better, like for sexual abuse survivors, you know, in, you know, especially in the wake of the Me Too movement, because, you know, we are awakening.
Yes. And I love that. I think everyone in every generation is awakening, especially the whole COVID thing. I find the whole lockdown, as heavy as it's been, I think a lot of people have gone through some sort of little or humongous awakening. I mean, there's obviously lots of other reasons why people might be more awake and have their eyes and ears more wide open. But I believe that, and I'm so happy to see that today there is definitely a lot more awareness. And I think that the Me Too movement definitely helped, even though there's a lot of people that might disagree with how it was delivered and whatever. The point is, the Me Too movement definitely talked about the uncomfortable topic that has been shoved under the rugs for forever. And even if parents don't educate their kids, I think kids even hearing about it, there is some sort of comfort and education knowing that, oh, okay, that is actually not okay. Whereas me, I was born in the 90s and there wasn't Twitter, Instagram, there was news, but no way would they talk about that in the 90s. And there was no sex ed like there is today. So I think the Me Too movement definitely, in the bigger picture, made a beautiful impact in just making everyone be aware of that and how common it is, and it's not always stranger danger. That's what I always talk about on my page, how it's can be.
Do you know it mostly is because I have a good friend who's a OBGYN, and she said it is somebody you know.
Yep.
Somebody.
Yep.
90% of the time, maybe even 95. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
It's so rare. I mean, in Australia, there was this year 2 different cases where someone's tried to kidnap a student after school. And it was a shock. It's so, these things don't happen, especially not in Melbourne. It's shocking because it's actually quite a big effort to do these things, right? But if it's
with cell phones these days, cell phones these days, you don't know whose picture you're in. You know what I mean? You could be sitting in the restaurant with your friend having lunch, and someone could be taking your picture, and you would never know.
No. Yeah. Following you from far, far away and all of that. But if it's someone in the family or someone in your household, they're already there. They know everything about you, all your behaviors, all your characteristics, everything. And so it's if you've got the horrible mindset in that household, it's really easy for them, unfortunately.
Just say we talk about educating our kids and what parents should do, and one of the things I think that definitely needs more substance, a definition with more substance is the definition of consent, right? Because I've heard you talk about this on your podcast, and again, to outsiders who have not faced this kind of abuse or anything. It might be one of those, like, well, consent, right? Yes or no. But of course, it's so much more than that. And so can you talk about that, the deeper meaning of consent, of what exactly consent should be to everybody, and also how that consent is not just about sex?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm going to branch consent into 2 sections just for the time being. One being about obviously the sexual side, and it could be, with abusers, but it could also be with your partner. It doesn't have to be, the most horrid situation. It could be your husband, your fiance, your girlfriend, whatever. Unless there is an enthusiastic, yes, I want to as well, that's not consent. If you've spent the last 15 minutes or the whole day trying to convince your other half to have sex with you or to do something to you to please you in any way, and then you finally at the end get, you're all right, that's not consent. You have exhausted the person and manipulated them until they said that. And I mean, from my point of view, it's like, why would you even want to do that with that, unless someone's really wanting to do something with me, I don't want it. Like, that's just so cringe. But some people are just so, that they just don't care. They just want to do it. And so unless it's a definite yes.
How many girls in high school got in that situation?
Oh my goodness.
Where they just wanted to be popular, and they go to a party and the quarterback's there, and the next thing you know, he's pulling her in a bedroom, and
when we raise our children these days, it's not just about sex. Obviously, when you're raising your children, it's also about that hug or a kiss on the cheek to a cousin, an uncle, and so on. We need to make sure that our kids are aware that it's their own rules, their body, their rules. Because when I was growing up, and I'm sure maybe you might be able to relate to that as well, you have to hug that uncle, you have to kiss that auntie. It's rude. It's okay to say hello, but if you do not want to hug them or let them touch you, you do not have to. I was told it was rude not to kiss the uncle, and there was definitely some creepy uncles in the family that I did not want to get me up, but I had to because it was disrespectful in the whole family. And I think it's so great that I'm hearing a lot more parents talk about that to their kids.
You had talked about, when you came to the reality, you were talking to your friends or something like that this had happened, and it was like absolutely time to deal with it. How have you come to accepting it? Like that's a big, that's a lot of therapy, maybe.
Yep,
Mhm.
definitely. So obviously it's been years. I was 13 when it stopped, and by the time I was faced with this again in my life, I was 28, which was in America on a holiday in New Orleans.
Okay.
So when we came there is obviously, you know, there's all these spooky stories and amateur psychics and blah, 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 card readers and all that. And I kind of love a little bit about it, but then obviously a lot of them were just amateur, and it kind of became a bit of a joke between my then boyfriend and myself. And I saw this one lady far away, and she just caught my eye, and it must have just been her gypsy-like costume, but I was like, I need to go to her. I need to go see her. I'll pay a little bit more, something about it. Let's go suss her out. And she was actually really good. She was using numerology, which if you're not aware of that, it can be quite accurate to you personally.
Yeah.
All of that. And she actually said, she spoke about my sexual abuse as a child. And I sat there like what? And she said, I know it's been a long time and you've been trying to pretend like it didn't happen, but it's time to acknowledge it and you need to face it. And maybe you're going to write a letter to let it all out. But I can also see that you're going to help people with that. And I was like, first of all, what? Second of all, how do you know this? And as if I'm going to help anyone with this. No way. And here we are. So,
oh my gosh. I believe the
Wow.
universe, I believe in the universe puts you where you need to be.
Yes, 100%.
Right?
And that's why I got so drawn to her. And I couldn't look elsewhere. It was just, I had to go to her for some reason. And that the universe said, you know what, it's time for you to face your past and heal. And it was the best thing ever. I mean, for initially after that, I was a mess. All these little memories kept coming in. And it was really uncomfortable. The flashbacks were stronger than ever. And all these other issues came up within me, and depression, of course, without realizing at the time.
Sure.
Depression was big. You don't really always realize you're depressed until you look back and you're like, yeah, I think I was depressed at the time. Right? So eventually I thought, okay, I'm quite down the whole time now. I need to, maybe if I tell my boyfriend about it, I will be okay. So I finally told him, this is what happened. He had met my abuser, so he was just in shock about it. And then I thought, cool, all right, I've told a person, I've now told my story to one person, I'm going to be okay now. No, that's when the music really started. It just became heavier until it was so terrible that I needed to go see a therapist.
Nell's gonna ask. Nell, it's your turn.
Is it? No.
He never knows when to talk because I'm always talking.
Neil, you're up.
So continuing on that journey, you were talking about how, finally how everything started, a little bit of hope and then towards therapy. And of course, one of the major things of that healing journey and recovery is you're in a very happy relationship right now. How do you keep that trust alive going through what you went through and all the survivors that went through? I would imagine that it would be very difficult to trust people after that, especially romantic partners. So how do you keep that trust alive? What did you do to sort of not look at every single male with that eye of, oh, are they going to do this to me, what my cousin did or what this guy did or this or that?
That is a really tricky one, because until I went to therapy about my child sexual abuse, I didn't realize that all my trust issues my whole life were from that. Because if you think about it, I was a little girl who was finally excited to have that older brother figure who then took so much advantage of her. And it was the first time that I was finally full trust of just having fun and a good friendship. And that just got, it sets the tone. Unfortunately, it set the tone for me for every male I had met, friendship or romantically in any way. Therapy will help you. And I cannot stop saying it. A lot of people therapy can be very daunting. I understand. I try to not go to it for a long time.
I love it.
I love it. As soon as something gets a bit much, making an appointment, and I feel The feeling you get after therapy of everything making sense is just
Mhm.
amazing.
Kiddo, tell us about your podcast.
Yes.
I'm excited.
Yes.
Yes,
Sorry?
it's really good. I was just binging on it yesterday to do the
Yeah.
research for your questions, and oh my God, that it's amazing.
Mhm.
Oh,
Mhm.
bless you. That means a lot because I'm so new to it and I'm trying to figure it out. And I tend to be drawn to podcasts where, you know, people say the wrong thing accidentally or as in, you know, muck up a word,
Mhm.
say it
Mhm.
funnily and then they correct. Like that
Mhm.
rawness is what I get hooked on because you're listening to a real person is like, and you know, how funny Maureen was on a big pillow at the start of it and now she's,
I know,
you know,
because
fine and
I saw
a
that
real
you were at
person.
eye level, and I was like looking down, and
that's what
Right.
I'm catching myself in my podcast. I'm still in the very early days of my podcast, and I noticed that sometimes I catch myself trying to be professional because I'm always very professional at my full-time job at work, and trying to snap out of that sometimes is a little bit tricky until
Mhm.
my me comes out and my own personality gets
Mhm.
back out of that, you know, shield. So so my podcast is called Love Your Mind and Soul. It's on
I
Spotify.
love that name. Love it. Love your mind and
It's so
soul.
personal to me. I love it.
These
Yeah.
last couple of questions are more like we're going to try to like advice for others who were, you
Yeah.
know, who are rather maybe where you were years ago. But starting with speaking of your podcast, when I was listening to it yesterday, I remember in one of, and you mentioned this earlier in this interview as well about that creepy uncle of yours who you were kind of forced to reciprocate that, you know, hug and kiss and all that. And I know that when you're going through that, it's impossible, and nobody should blame any survivor for, oh, why couldn't you see it? That's not, you know, you should never blame it. But in hindsight, would you recommend anything that you spotted now looking back? Any pattern in abusers? Is it just follow your intuition? Is it just creepy vibes you get? What should people look out for, you know, when they're setting their boundaries?
Yeah. I find that children have got such a strong intuition. They're born with it, right? But then all of us, we teach them to, oh, don't cry, oh, don't do this, don't share that, blah, blah, blah. And we collectively shut down and silence and eventually get rid of their beautiful intuition. So children know. Why else would they know that, I'm getting creepy vibes of that uncle, don't know why, something's not right. And they know before all of us because us adults, we are so sucked into the whole, maybe it's the family respect bullshit that we just think, oh, it's such a, you know, respected uncle, how dare you, and that was my reaction to me. Oh no, why would you say that that uncle's creepy? He is, we all respect him and blah 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 blah. But as a kid, I knew something was off, and I don't know any stories about him, but his energy is still, I still remember it so strongly. But again, I don't think there's a pattern, and I'm, especially with my work, I love picking up on patterns, and I always catch myself picking up on patterns quite early. It helps me understand things better and so on. I think maybe one little pattern, only because it's just standing out to me now, and as you're talking about celebrities as well, it's usually the popular people as well. You know, the charming one, the popular one, the one that, you know, what, especially if any parents are listening, is there a person in your life that is spoiling one of your children a little bit more than all the other ones? Are they showering with gifts?
Good point.
That's a really common thing that I hear a lot. You know, they would, and that's grooming, that's early signs of grooming. All of that. But then the one thing, there might not be one specific pattern that we can pinpoint, but one thing that we can all make sure of is the environment we all have. Because a child is not going to talk to you about something that's happened to them if they do not feel safe with you, if you do not keep their secrets safe. You obviously teach kids not to have secrets, but they do need to have a safe space with you and your partner. There needs to be that. And without that, they're not going to have anyone to talk to. And that's how I quickly had this happen until I was 13. And yeah.
Did they threaten you, like, if you tell, I'll kill your parents kind of thing?
It wasn't that. It was just more so, well, he used some of our parents' behaviors, which was proof to me. One of them was well, you already tell them that I hit you and bully you and no one believes you. I was like, you're right. They don't believe me. So why would they believe you? And also, if you do tell them, I'm going to tell them it's your fault anyway, because everything is your fault. So if you tell a little girl these things, a little girl who's still developing, still growing, they're going to believe what you say, and they're going to trust what you say. So, yeah.
You mentioned that therapy has played a huge part in your healing journey, and of course, everybody needs it. Everybody should. But are there any other things like, you know, either mindfulness exercises or mental, anything you do to make yourself feel safe, you know, on a daily basis, and anything you do to, like, if you ever feel triggered by the past or if some bad memory comes, what would you recommend to others who might, besides, of course, the therapy? If there is anything.
Look after yourself. Like, do things that feel good for you. Therapy, while it might make us feel like shit, which is good because that's how it all comes out.
Isn't that the truth though? Yeah.
Therapy is not supposed to feel angelic and beautiful. And even when I talk about, you know, my spiritual awakening journey, it sounds so magical. It's not. It's ugly and it doesn't feel nice. Initially anyway. And some of the other things I did is I also looked back and said, okay, what are the things, I did a little bit of inner child work, and I also thought, you know, what are the things that I would have loved to do as a child that I missed out on? And one of them was dancing for me. I've always wanted to do dancing.
What kind?
So currently I do, it's called reggaeton. So it's like hip hop, but the Latin version.
Nice.
Wow.
Yeah. Love it. And my teacher is oh my God, she's an angel. So she's all into the spiritual stuff like I am, and, you know, self-development and all that. And she actually sometimes incorporates our dancing into our, you know, kind of feeling what's stuck in your body and how to use your body
to get rid of that. Yeah.
And art,
you know,
for me, art.
Yeah, me too.
I'm going to show you mine quickly.
Oh, yes. Please do.
So I did this one recently.
She's going to be 100% better than me.
Inspired by my journey.
Oh, my gosh.
Wow. Now, that's a real shell. I didn't paint that. That's real shell.
But the female, is that a female with long dark hair?
Yeah.
Yep.
That is stunning. That is stunning.
So that's the shell that she's been hiding her whole life when things were happening, and she eventually used her shell to sit on and be powerful. And it's got a few crystals on there.
You know what? You don't know how much that just clicked with me, because Nella, honey, you have been a joy. They can find your podcast on Spotify. Can you say the name again, sweetie, for everybody?
Yeah, sure. Now, my name is the exact same on Instagram and Spotify, or if you have Anchor, which is a great free app for podcasts.
Yes.
And the name is Love Your Mind and Soul, all in one word. And the and is A-N-D, so it's Love Your Mind and Soul. Because in the journey, you learn to love your mind and soul again. Because unfortunately, when you're going through the journey, you tend to hate your mind for reminding you of it, but we together can learn to love it again.
And how about before we go, wanted to ask, can you give any parting words for anyone who's struggling to get to that healing space where you are right now, but maybe perhaps is not there quite yet? So they're probably feeling like, is this going to work out? Is my journey going to lead ultimately to healing? So what would you say to those people? Yeah,
that's great one. I find that when you're in the journey, you very often, this is the wrong word, but I'm going to use it because I cannot think of anything. It's still early here in Australia. You tend to drag your feet a little bit on, healing, because you also don't really understand what's going on. Why am I feeling this way? And I've spoken to so many survivors on my page, and one thing we all had in common is that we didn't know, was it abuse? Was it actually my fault? Was it bad? I thought it was a good thing. I thought I wanted it, and all of that. Until we acknowledge that, hey, that was wrong, we're going to be stuck in that. And I welcome to anyone listening to this, even if we've never spoken before, come to me on my page on Instagram and feel free to chat to me, because I will never judge anyone, and I will tell you. And I find that once that's acknowledged, it's so easy to go, yeah, you're right. That was wrong. that shouldn't have happened. So that really helps you step into it and really take your power back and get into it and start healing it, because you just
Take your power back. Take
Yeah,
your
exactly.
power back.
that
Because
acknowledgement and
children,
acceptance.
because
Yeah.
children are never at fault.
Yeah,
Ever. No
exactly.
matter what
Even
they
if the
tell
child
you.
ask for it. And that's a few stories that I hear as well. But I remember asking my dad or mum that I wanted it. Yes, because you've been manipulated and raised and conditioned that way. You don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
This has been
I might
such a
get back onto
joy.
it.
Thank you.
This was,
Thank you,
yeah.
guys.
You guys, you've
I
been
really-
wonderful.
It
Thanks.
was amazing.
Thank you, everyone, for watching. And thank you, Nella, for bringing a topic that never, ever, ever gets enough awareness.
Be sure to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at all the links listed in the description. And don't forget to hit like on this video and subscribe to this channel so you never miss an episode. Thank you, everyone, once again, and we'll see you right here next week at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Goodbye.
Goodbye.